Welcome, everybody. As you know, and as you see and hear, we are recording this session. So I hope it will be helpful to you as a reference afterward, as well as to anybody who might be supporting you in the duties of entering and maintaining data in the data collection system. So again, depending on where you are, good morning or good afternoon. And I do want to alert our newer grantees that we are focusing on one small component of the data collection system, and we do expect to provide a more robust training in the next few weeks. So please stay tuned for that. But welcome to talk about what I'm really excited about, and that's a new digital or electronic-based service payback agreement. I'm joined today, of course, by our OIETA team from Synergy, as well as Amy Bitterman from Westat, who is one of our many contracted colleagues out of Westat and Anlar. So thank you, Amy, for joining us today. As we begin today's conversation, as always, please feel free to enter any questions or responses or comments in the chat box as we move through, and we'll check that periodically and address questions as needed. So again, thank you all for joining today. Next slide. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the payback agreement, give you a little bit of an overview. I know it's not new for most of you, but for some of you, it certainly is. Amy is going to walk us through a live demonstration so that you can see exactly how to navigate the process. We're going to walk through some resources and support as you begin to actually recruit and enter the data for your participants in the program. And then we'll, if we haven't stopped or haven't addressed all the questions during the event, we'll try to address as many questions and answers as we can today. And of course, we will have opportunities. I'll just remind you all for follow-up conversations tomorrow, to the extent you can join tomorrow's talking circle, and I'll talk about that more later. Next slide. Let's go forward. Yeah. Next slide. So as you know, when you recruit your participants, our program regulations call for your ensuring and you're being required as the grantee to hold a meeting with the prospective candidate, walk them through all of the expectations and responsibilities that come along with receiving the training benefit. And for each one that you actually fund, they must sign this service payback agreement. I will tell you that the very simplistic way of describing it is it's comparable, or parallel to signing for a loan, right? Because in essence, this really is a loan until they've completed the service payback obligation, at which time it would be forgiven. So I think I just want to share, especially for our new grantees, that that's a really important way to talk about this and not talk about it as a scholarship or some other kind of benefit that doesn't have a payback or some kind of obligation tied to it. So you'll hear about us talking more about the importance of that as you embark on your project over this next year. But this is really what binds them legally to the department, and it outlines all of the conditions. We would ask that you not alter the document in any way. All of you pretty much have other ancillary or supplemental documents you have your grantees or your participants signing anyway, for your own purposes and your own requirements, etc. That's fine. Add this as, the addendum. This is the only document that needs to actually be put in the data collection system. So I just want to stress that even if you have other documents that for your purposes as an institution or entity that's supporting this, we really just need this service payback agreement signed by you and the participant. This is also, of course, available on the home, you can get it from the home page by clicking on Service Payback in the left-hand navigation bar of the PD system. And Amy, I'll let you show them that later as we go through, where they can grab it without even signing in to the system. Next slide, please. So again, we're pretty excited that now there's a digital process. I think it really bodes well, given the crazy of the pandemic and implications for you being able to meet or not meet with prospective candidates in person. So it really does, I think, give you another option or a degree of flexibility. But I do want to underscore that this agreement has to accompany a meeting to discuss the requirements of the grant, of the training benefit. This is all the same information. So for those of you who are, are go-getters and who, as soon as you got the grant on August 3rd, already knew that you had some prospective candidates. I know that many of our veteran grantees have already moved ahead. You might have already had people sign a paper-based agreement, meaning you've downloaded from the system and you did it how you've always done it. That is fine. That is fine if you've done that. That option has not gone away. And again, Amy will walk you through that in a minute. So you have not done anything wrong. There's no redo. But really, we want you to think about this moving forward for future recruits. And let's go to the next slide. And why do I want you to? So I want you to, I think there are a lot of reasons. And for some of you with whom I already had good post-award discussions, thank you all for participating in those. I've shared, it's really decreasing the kind of burden of the data input that you have to do. It really minimizes duplication of effort. So that's a real big plus for you guys. It's saving you time. The big plus for both of us, you and us as the department, is it reduces the security incidents. So there's certainly issues with, the sensitivity of maintaining documentation that has social security numbers on it, et cetera. So this from the outset would mask that, and it really mitigates a lot of those potential security concerns. And then it, of course, ensures alignment between the agreement and the participant record, meaning when you're doing these things manually, missteps in terms of the data entered for all the contact and other ancillary information, sometimes by mistake may not match what is actually in the agreement. That is completely eliminated. And so the idea of, again, just ever increasing validity and reliability of the data is really critical and helpful for both you guys and for us. Before we move into the next few slides, and because we have a number of new grantees or new project directors, I want to remind folks that it's really critical to the best of your ability. And I know, things don't always happen in the ordinal manner in which you want it to happen. We gave you a really tight time frame, right? From the initial grant award obligation, meaning you didn't get it till August 3rd. And I know you're scrambling to get some recruits in now. To the extent that that's happening, and it's really critical that you not lose sight of making sure that this gets signed before you disperse any funds to folks, before you disperse that tuition benefit. Why? Because if by some remote chance that individual decides to leave without ever having signed that, your institution, you are on the hook for those funds and returning that to the department. And that means, it doesn't mean you're not having to be responsible or trying to recoup that money from that individual, but if they don't give it back, you still owe that money. So just being aware of that kind of order of the sequence of events to making sure you have that signed. So if you have any questions about that later, I'm happy to take them, but again, that's more for your protection, and just want to make sure you're aware of that for folks who are new. Next slide, please. So we've gotten to the more complicated slide, and that's where I get to sit back and turn it over to Amy. And she's going to walk us through the process through which you'll carry out the signature or the signing of a service payback agreement digitally. Thanks, Amy.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So this slide shows a flow chart of what we're going to be showing in more detail, and we'll show the actual live process when I do the demo, but just to kind of get things started and with understanding what this looks like. The first step that happens is that you as the project director would initiate the process, and I'll show you how that works, where you have the option, like Angela said, of either going down this path of completing the digital version of the service payback agreement, or still you can continue doing what you have been doing in the past with that more paper PDF based version, and you have the hard signatures on. That's still an option. So you'll be able to pick which way you want to go. With the digital option, the project director starts the process. They complete the information that's needed on the service payback agreement, and then submit that in the system. And then an email goes to the participant saying, hey, the service payback agreement has been started for you in the PDPDCS. Please log in and review and sign it. So then that's the first time the participant will be introduced to the system, and they'll have to create their login and sign into the system. And then they go in and they see everything that you as the project director, the grantee, has put in about them for their service payback agreement. Then they have the opportunity to review it. And if they think everything looks good, they agree with all of it, they can go ahead and add their digital signature at that point. They also, if they find that there's inaccuracies or they have a question about something, they can indicate that on the form. There's a place I'll show you where they can, like a messaging log, they can put a message in for the grantee and make the change that they need to make. Then the project director is alerted, oh, your participant has reviewed the agreement and has some questions or made some adjustments. So it goes back to the grantee to look and see, do they agree? Do they need to make any changes? If then they'll at that point send it back again to the participant, who has again that chance, if everything looks good, once any changes have been made, they can go ahead and sign. Once the participant signs, then the project director is alerted, and they could go ahead and add their signature at that point, as long as everything still looks good again. So that kind of process can really be repeated until both parties, both the grant and the participant, feel like everything looks good and is accurate. One thing I did want to make sure to mention, because we have started this process already with a few of the other Department of Ed programs that we work with that have similar types of payback situations in their programs. And the way we set it up is that it has to be the project director that is actually the signer doing that digital signature on these agreements. A lot of grants have a secondary user, have somebody else in the system that helps with data entry and that sort of thing. And that person can still initiate this process and kind of carry it through. But until that last step where the project director signs it, it has to be the project director. It cannot be your secondary user. So just, you want to make sure to keep that in mind. And it looks like there might be a question. What is the turnaround time frame from the project director submitting and then receiving an email to complete? And it's instantaneous. It's all programmed within the system. It's triggered as soon as you submit, and I'll show you when I do my demonstration how quickly that happens. Another question is the initiating place in the OIE PDPDCS, and it is. Yep. And I'll show you it's hopefully will be very easy to spot, and really a very similar process, not a lot different than what you've already been doing for entering brand new participants in the system. But like Angela said, it has the advantage of reducing the burden in some ways. Instead of having to enter some of that same information in the system that you already are putting on that paper payback agreement, you're kind of, it's all the same data being fed both on the digital payback agreement and what you'll see on the participant record. And I think you'll be able to see that when we move into our demonstration. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
And Amy, as you get that up, get the site up and ready to run the live demonstration, let me just share with any of you who happen to be on where you know that there's a project director change that you guys have requested or is pending. I'm waiting for more information from you before I make that project director change in G5, meaning a new grant award notification. You may not be able to access this. So until I have your updated information, you won't be able to do what Amy's doing now. Conversely, for many of our veteran grantees that have the same project director, you should see the new grant in there that has been added for you to start this process. And you may see it, project directors, if you've already started to orient yourselves and look at it, but I would ask you to just follow along for now with Amy, just so you can get familiar with the locations of everything, and then certainly try it after we go through this first walkthrough. Thanks, Amy.
Sure. So here's the website. Hopefully most of you, at least returning grants, should be familiar and recognize it. It's pdp.ed.gov/OIE for any newbies. Angela had mentioned we do have a lot of information on this left-hand side that's available without having to log into the system. So we recommend, you have your participants go to this website and check a lot of that information out even before they agree to take the funds, just to kind of learn more about things. We have a set of frequently asked questions that you can always go to if any question comes up. But then we also have a help desk that I'll mention a number of times too, that we definitely would like you to contact us that way. Really critically, on this training and resources page, this is also another really important page to send participants to, as well as employers, if they have questions or want some assistance navigating the system. And we do now have a great resource related specifically to the digital service payback agreements that we'd like you to take a look at for sure. That'll go over a lot of what I'm sharing now on this call as well, plus a lot of recordings of past trainings and webinars. So that's always a helpful spot. And then Angela referenced the page where you can go to the program regulations and also download that service payback agreement if you're still going to use that hard copy paper version of the agreement. And then of course our contact information is here too for help desk. It's always available on this left-hand side. We're available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. You can call, send an email. We have a fax as well, if that is a way to communicate with us. So to log into the system, there's up in the right-hand corner, it says secure login. So you would click there. And for those maybe who haven't been in the system for a little while, or you forgot your password, you can always click on where it says forgot password and enter in your email and say reset password, and you'll get an email with information and instructions for logging in and resetting your password. So I'm going to log in now as kind of a test fake grantee. So this should look very similar to what it looks like when you all go into the system. Okay. So again, I won't, go through most of this, since most of you are returning and know, and as Angela said, we'll have a more in-depth training coming up to really orient those who are new to the system. But you have your grant number, and I'm in here as Tammy Wilson. I'm the project director. There's a secondary user, Amanda Pierce, who's also has access to the system. And if we scroll down further to this section, this is where you will go to initiate the digital service payback agreement process. So under where it says add new participant, you now have the option of either choosing if you want to add a new service payback agreement and participant record using the digital version, or you can do it the way you have been doing it and uploading the PDF. So now you have these two options. So for today, we're going to walk through what you do when you want to proceed with the digital version. And a lot of this will look very similar to what you've already been doing. You get this very first screen. This is what you get if you're uploading the paper PDF version as well, where you're asked to enter in the social security number just to make sure the scholars, or I'm sorry, I might slip up and say scholar sometimes, participant is not already in the system and is a brand new record, or brand new person. And what you'll see here is the service payback agreement. You'll have instructions at the top. That's really kind of describing the process of that back and forth between you and the participants. What happens. Also, there's the paperwork burden statement, but we sort of have that hidden too, that you can open and close so that you're not taking up, I don't know what's happening here. Okay, taking up too much space on the page, but we encourage you to make sure to review all of that language. And then down here in section A, which is really the same as section A on the participant record that you would have filled in if you were going the other path and uploading a PDF of the agreement, where you would enter in the participant's contact information. Those red asterisked fields are all required fields. We do, encourage you to put in as much information as you have and as possible. But for purposes of saving time, I'm not going to fill out everything, just the required fields. So of course, it's really important that we have the email. That is our main way of communicating, and everybody's username. And then
Amy, I'm going to mention it I'm just going to mention real quick for new project directors, especially, but everyone, just a reminder that when you're collecting an email address from your new candidates, that you are making sure that it's an email address that's not just their university email address, but something more permanent, right? At times those university emails go away. So you want to try to make sure that you have maybe a Gmail or Yahoo or some other kind of personal account that you know is likely to carry beyond their tenure at the university.
Yes, definitely. And you can, in the alternative email address, maybe put in the university if you want, but make sure that primary one will be able to reach them years beyond their time at the university. And then section B is contact information. And then C is alternate contact information. So we do ask, it's not required, but if you can provide information on a relative or someone who knows the participant, and if we have trouble down the road years from now getting a hold of the participant, they've moved and we don't have, we have old information, someone we could reach out to try to help find them. Okay, so here's where things get a little bit different than what you've seen before on the participant record. So section D is where we have some information pre-filled. We have the grant number, the name of the project director, the name of the university for the grantee, and then the project title. And that information, you as the project director going in here cannot edit that or change that information. But you will be adding in here the date of the service payback meeting. So that's added. You add in the estimated total amount of training in months that you expect for that participant, and then also the estimated total amount of funding that you expect them to receive over the course of their time in the program with you. And then scrolling down in section E, this is very critical, especially for the participants to read. This is kind of what they're basically agreeing to from the regulations, the terms and conditions of accepting these funding, that they are required to have to do the service payback, or they'll have to pay back through cash, all of that really critical, important information. And then down here in section F is that message log that I mentioned. So at this point, I've just started the digital agreement. I can, if I want, put here a message to the participant if there's something, specific that I want to note, or you can leave it blank. And then you can just go ahead. If you can save it for later. If you've started this and realize you don't have all the information you need, you can save it for later and then come back to it. But I'm going to go ahead and submit it because I've put everything in that's needed. So then you'll get directed back to your main landing page, and you'll see this message in green, letting you know that the document has been submitted, your participant's been notified. The next step is that they'll review it and then either sign it, or perhaps it'll come back to you if they have something they have a question about or need changed. And then it mentions here, you can also go to this view pending and approved payback agreements to check the status. And that's a new page on here, and I'll show you. You can get to it from that link at the top, but then also it's always available down here where it says view pending and approved service payback agreements. And if you click on that, then you'll see for all of your participants who have a digital agreement, kind of where they are in the process. This very first one is the one we just entered, so that now is pending participant signature. We have a few others that are completed. And once they have been signed by both parties and are complete, you can download the PDF. So this should look really identical to the version you're used to seeing, the hard copy version. It has all that information that we entered in. And then at the bottom, those digital signatures are there. So I'm going to pause for a second and just see if there's any questions that have come in, anything you want me to go back over with what we've shown so far.
Amy, let me start while folks are thinking about that or providing any questions in the chat box. In using your example, where I see Amy Bitterman as a pending participant signature, you mentioned sort of once they complete their end, I'm notified. How am I notified? Is that coming to my email address on record? Do I have to go to the system to see that? How do I know?
And that leads me into the next part that I was gonna take us to. So I am now, this is my Gmail account, and I can set, and so we'll see. So I set up, a Gmail for my participant that I'm adding. I think it was amy+bitterman@gmail.com. So I'm now the participant, and I go into my email, and using that email you put in the system for them, I've received an email here that is now welcoming me to the PDPDCS, letting me know that your project director has initiated this process. Here's this link and access code. You need to now log in and review and sign. So now I'm going to flip over. I'm going to be the participant and show you what it looks like from their side of things. I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to see if I can kind of maneuver being in here with both a grantee and a scholar without having to log in and out. So I'm going to do it in different browsers. So, and this is very similar. This is the same thing that you'll see if you're a brand new project director and have never logged into the system. So this is kind of a good little training for that too. So you'll have a link in your email that we just went to, and then there's also this key that we need to enter. So I'm going to copy that. I put the key in here, and then you have to create your passcode. Okay, and then you click register. And now I'm going to log in as the participant. All right, so this is the first time a participant is logging into the system. They will see this information, the Privacy Act notice. They'll see the rules of behavior that they have to then agree to the terms. And then they will see on their main menu their agreement. It'll have the information and instructions on what we would like them to do at this point. And then if they click on Service Payback Agreement View, it will take us to what really looks pretty much identical to what we saw on the grantee side of things, with a description of what we need the participant to do. Again, they can look at the Privacy Act notice and the paperwork burden statement. Then they see in sections A and B the information the grantee just entered for them. Some of this information the participant can change if they realize, oh, my address isn't right. I'm going to go ahead and change that. Some of this information they cannot edit themselves for security purposes and just making sure that no one's, pretending they're somebody they shouldn't be, that sort of thing. So of course, if let's say my last name was spelled wrong, they would go down to that message log and explain what change needs to be made. And then the grantee would be able to do that on their side. But some of this information, the participant can edit themselves right here, like the address. I could go ahead and add in the alternate contact information if I want as the participant. And then in section D, they see that information that was pre-populated with the grant number and the project director name and so on. And then the other pieces that the project director added in, the date of the service agreement meeting, amount of funding, and number of months of training. I can't edit these as a participant, but again, if I go down here to section F, I can say something like, I don't agree with the amount of funding should be, whatever you think that whatever the message needs to be, and a description of kind of what you question or disagree with or what you've changed. And then section E is that same language we saw that the grantees also see from the regulations with their terms and conditions of agreeing to take the money. And then at this point, because I did make a change and I also put a message in the box, you'll see that I can't sign it as a participant. If I hadn't made that change to the address or put in a message here, you would have seen where it gives me the option to go ahead and sign it, because if they look at it the first time and everything looks great, they can just sign it and it goes back to the grantee. But because I made some changes, it's not letting me sign it yet. So I'll go ahead and submit this. So now it goes back to the grantee, and you'll see a similar message that we saw that the grantees did, letting you know that your university's been notified of your changes. They'll get back to you. It'll come back to you when they've done their part. Okay, I'm going to stop again and check in.
Amy, we have a few questions.
Oh, sure.
I'll ask you, and before we move forward.
Mhm.
One question is, if you go down to part E, subsection C, it makes reference to a copy of the eligibility certification form.
Mhm.
Is that something that's available on our site, like on our resources page or something where we don't have to log in to see that?
It's not, we can add it if you want, like on the resources, but just there's a link to it. I just clicked on it that gets you directly to it there. But we can also add it on the resources page as another, spot.
Let's do that. Thank you, Allison, for your question. We can add it on there so that you can see it independent of signing in.
Mhm.
I mean, it is on our ed.gov page, but yeah, we won't make you go hunt for it. We'll put it there. Thank you. The next question, and Nancy, feel free to unmute if you want to further clarify, but I'm going to make some assumptions in your question. We got a question about, can you mix digital and non-digital service payback agreements? I would imagine that what she's referring to is if I've got some participants that use the manual versus some that might use the electronic, is that a problem?
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
You have the flexibility to do that, right?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
And Nancy, I think it's what you asked second, it's a great question that I frankly turn around and ask you guys, would you suggest sitting with students and going through this together? I think if you have the time to really sit in person and do it, that's ideal.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's actual in person or even on a Zoom, right? If you're remote from each other and not physically together, you could still walk through it. It could take a lot of pain points away, right? To make sure you get it right.
Yep.
Thank you for that question. Savannah, great question. So Amy, when this gets sent to the participant, what's the email address, right, that it's coming from?
Yes, that is an excellent question, because I feel like we do often hear of, I didn't get the email, I can't find it, because it does end up in spam and your junk mail, and it's paybackobligations@ed.gov, and that's the same as our help desk email. So yes, please, when you are having that meeting with your participants, let them know to be expecting emails from that email, add us to their contact and accepted emails, or at least, make sure they're checking their junk and spam too. That's a great point.
And the last question so far is from Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Can the participant review the agreement at any time?
Yes, yep. I mean, they can, so if I wanted to, I could, log out right now from as signed in as the participant. Even though I've kind of sent it back to the grantee, it's kind of in their court, but I can still, let's see if I just go back to home. So now you can see it says pending grantee review. So even though I can't really do anything with it, I can still always go back in and look at it.
And they can too, once it's signed,
Yep.
the participant? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that I'm not 100% sure about actually for OI. We can look once we've finished this, we'll go back and check and see if we can.
All right,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm gonna note that in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not 100%
No,
sure.
that's okay. And then we have so Carmelita, your point is that you're going to pre-populate some of this data and then meet with them afterward just to do the confirmation of accurate information. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
I'm kind of coming on here, but just because I'm getting a little nervous, but not too much. So we have our meeting scheduled for next Saturday, the 28th. And for some reason, I was thinking that this digital thing would be some kind of a link. I could give the participants, say, go and hit the link, asking them to all bring computers, and I would have computers there to help in case they didn't have one. And they would do this. But and looking at the way that you're showing us, Amy, it looks like our position as a PD needs to pre-populate that form.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you'll need
it sends right, and then it sends the message to the student. So the intention would be to pre-populate prior to the meeting, so that at the meeting they would open that email and then they would have an opportunity to fill out the form. Does that sound like? And we won't.
That sounds great. I think that's a really good strategy because then you have that opportunity to kind of verbally discuss. So if they do have a question or something isn't quite right, you can sort of bypass a little bit maybe of all that. But I think that sounds great. I would highly recommend that approach.
Okay. So I got a lot of pre-populating to do. Okay, but thank you. I'll get at it. Okay, thanks.
Sure. But you're gonna, you'll have to put it in the system at some point or another.
Right.
So yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmelita. I think you can move. I think that's all I see for now.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'm gonna now I'm gonna go back into my email, and now I'm getting an email as the project director, letting me know that my participant has made some changes, and I need to go back into the system now and take a look at it. So see if I'm still logged in here as the grantee. I am back on the grantee page. Now, if I go down to that view pending and approved service payback agreements link, and I click on that, we'll see for Amy Bitterman, now my status is pending grantee review, and I'll click on view document. And if we scroll down, we'll see the change that the participant made to the address is reflected here. So we'll see that. And then going all the way down to the message log, we see the note that the participant left. So I can now, as the grantee, let's say, oh, they're right. I need to change that. So now I'll say corrected funding amount. And I will submit for review. So now the process starts over again, and it goes back over to the participant. So I'll skip the email piece of things, but the participant will have gotten another email telling them your grantee has reviewed, and now it's back in your court. So I go back to the participants page, You'll see the status now has changed, pending participant review. So now it's back with me as the participant. If I click on Service Payback Agreement View, and I scroll down to the message log, let's see. Okay, now I see, oh, the project director said they corrected it, and it looks like, yep, now it's showing that $6,000 amount. So I think everything looks great. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. So down here in this participant signature section, you'll see there's information about the False Claims Act, also about the electronic signature. And then it's just a matter of the participant typing their name into this box. One key thing is that the name they type has to match exactly the name that they're in the system as. So this, I think this is from Amy Bitterman. So let's just try, I'm going to try putting in, let's say I'm putting in my maiden name or something different than what's in the system. If I try to submit it, are you seeing this little pop-up at the towards the top? It says the name included must match the name on the participant record. So it won't let me sign unless I'm signing with the exact name. So now I'll accept and submit, and now it has gone back to the grantee for them to sign. And if we go back over to the grantee page, scroll down to the view pending and approved. And again, the grantee would have gotten an email letting them know that it's ready for them. So now we'll see Amy Bitterman is pending grantee signature. So if I view the document and go down to the bottom signature section, we'll see, yep, now I see that the participant has signed it and dated it. And now I'm going to sign it as the grantee. And the same thing with the grantee is it has to match exactly the name. And that's kind of why I mentioned also it has to be the grantee that signs this, not the secondary user. So I'm going to accept and submit. And now it's telling me, great, your service payback agreement has been finalized. And then, but that does not end things by any means. Because what you'll see here is now the full participant record is showing. So that full page that you're used to seeing with all the information that you fill out. But the nice thing is that now those first few sections are pre-populated with the information from the digital agreement. So you don't have to enter this in again. So you'll see the name and social security number, email, address, all of that, so that everything is consistent. And you're not having to enter it multiple times. And then down here in section D is where you will see the finalized service payback agreement. And I think someone had a question about being able to see it. And yes, the grantee definitely now always has access to be able to open it up and get to it. And all of the information that's in here should match what we entered in the system. And we have the signatures at the bottom. So I would encourage everyone just to make sure, once you've completed this, we don't want you to wait for sure, not more than 30 days, but really trying to do it as quickly as possible after this piece of it to go in and actually fill out the rest of the participant record, because there's still a lot of information in there that we need and that the participants need to be able to see too when they're logging in and taking a look at their record. So what it will look like now, I believe, is if we go into the list of all of our, so I got out of that page. Let's say at that time, you're not going to fill out the whole record. You need to come back to it. You would go in just like you do to view a list of all of your participants that are in the system. And you'll see here, the one we just added, Amy Bitterman, is pending because it's been started, but you still need to go in and complete the full record. So you would click on the name and then, keep going, starting with section E is where you would fill out the rest of the participants' information. And none of this has changed. All of the information on here is exactly the same as what you've been entering into that participant record.
I have a quick question, Amy.
Sure.
In the old Thank you so much. This makes life so much easier. Everything
good.
is in one
Streamlined, right?
place,
One
right?
place,
In one
yeah.
place. You don't have to go to the files and you don't. Anyways, that piece where the work 20 hours or less, there was a section in the previous. Where is that over here? Is it here? And who is signing to that? Is it me based on the participants' word, or is it for the participant to say, no, I'm not working beyond 20 hours or something like that? Where is that?
Is this the item you're talking about here? Is the participant a full-time scholar and then here carries a workload?
Yes,
is not
yes.
employed?
Yes.
Oh, you're filling this out. This
I'm
part of it.
feeling.
So you would
Okay.
need to ask them for that information.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Amy, we have another question that's been pending here, and back to sort of when the changes might be, when you're volleying between the participant and the grantee for changes, are there a timestamp in terms of changes? Can the grantee see sort of when somebody's done that?
Yeah, in that, well, it's
Or a
in
phone
that
number?
in that message log area. While it's still kind of going back and forth is, yeah, that towards that bottom where they were the comment message boxes, and there was a stamp, a date and name of person who added that message is there. So I think that's kind of the best way to keep track of that.
That covers that.
Mhm.
The next question is, and I think this is similar to what Carmelita just asked, can we pre-fill all information before initiating the agreement form so that the participant can both review and sign the form all at the same time?
Yes, yeah, definitely. We would definitely recommend you to do that. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think that does. And Leslie, you just made reference to making your students complete an employment verification document. Again, those are, I would call, supplemental or ancillary documents. They don't need to be included in the DCS necessarily on this data collection system, but just know that those things, we certainly encourage you guys, whatever you need to put in place to help support, the retention, and more importantly, help them understand and be informed about their responsibilities, right, throughout the process. Amy, I think one of the other questions that we think about is, want to go back to a couple of items, and I'm going back many steps, but I'm also going to come right back, which is when we go to the home page, I do want to caveat a couple of things for people, because we will, in short order, be making relevant updates to the system in order to make sure it's aligned to the most recent regulations. I share that with you because at the outset, at the beginning, Amy walked through the left-hand navigation bar and some of the great resources that are there, starting with like the frequently asked questions. Right now, those frequently asked questions are really specific to the older regulations. Those older regulations are not obsolete because they're still relevant, for example, to our FY16 cohort, our FY17 cohort, but not for our 18 and our 21 cohorts. So just know that those are going to be updated over the next series of months. But I just want to call your attention to that, to know that if there's something there that doesn't look right or looks in conflict with what we've shared, what we're sharing for now is certainly the most accurate, but what's on that page might not always be the most current information, and we'll keep you posted on that. So Amy, that's just kind of an FYI on that. The resources page, if there's something not there that you think can be helpful to you, please let us know, or to your grant or to your participants, things that we've covered. We'd certainly be happy to add to those sections if needed. And then I just want to underscore what Amy's referred to, there's the help desk. The help desk staff is great. They'll certainly get back with you if there's something more systematic. They can help you resolve it in short order. So please take advantage especially for our newbies who might need a lot more support starting this off. Any other questions? If not, Amy, this is great. Thank you so much. I think at this time, what I'm going to ask, if Sarah, I can bring you back on to maybe just share with folks a couple of last items. And I know we have I think we have a few slides, Amy, still right on the resources to kind of just
Yeah, there's
walk
just
through.
resources.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to stop sharing, sorry.
All right, so we did have one slide in about digital versus physical, but I think you've basically covered all of that information, so we can jump right into your resources and support.
Yeah.
Great.
If you want to go to the next slide, and I think we've touched on probably all of these and showed you where they are located. But as we heard, there's going to be a recording of this webinar that will be available. The frequently asked questions are a great resource, but those will be changing in the not too distant future. And on the next slide, I believe we have a few more resources more specific to payback obligations, like a link to the agreement, the regulations, and again, the FAQs. You can go to the next slide is our contact information, and just wanted to reiterate what to please let us make sure to include in emails, or if you're leaving a voicemail, because sometimes it can be a little challenging to find people in the system if in terms of the spelling or missing information. So if you are leaving a voicemail and also in an email, please provide your full name. If you're leaving a voicemail, please spell your name for us. Grant number is really critical, especially for grantees. We know participants don't always know what their grant number is, but if they can provide at least the university, that is helpful. And then also specifying what your role is, if you're a grantee, or if you're a participant or employer. That's usually, fairly easy to figure out, but still doesn't hurt to include. And I think
Great.
that might be about it for the slides.
Yeah, so we'll hop into a few reminders.
Actually, Sarah, hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one quick item that I want to raise. This is probably more relevant to again, some of our veteran grantees, but even our new grantees might encounter this. I'll give you a really truncated example. You might have a participant who is looking to get an administrator training benefit after immediately following having received a training benefit on a different grant, right? On an earlier grant. And so they're coming back. What that means is they're already in the system, as you might recall. So they've already got an account in the system. As you go through the process of, reconciling contact information, as Amy has said, making sure things match, it's also making sure that data, especially that you find out or make sure that any of these potential people, particularly with administrator training grants, where they had a previous benefit in another grant, that data matches as well. So if you run into any issues with that, contact the help desk or feel free to contact me about that if you need some clarification or guidance to make sure that that's done right. So that I know Amy and the team has done a great job of being able to combine those for people so that your participants aren't having to go to two different locations for all of their benefit stuff. It's all in one place. But to make that happen, we need to make sure the data is consistent. So just want to throw that out there for folks real quick. So I'm going to just jump to these two questions. Sorry, Sarah. I see that two other items. I'm going to leave that to you, Sarah, to answer the question about the planner. But Leslie, you asked about, other than the payback form, is the certificate of eligibility for federal assistance form also required, or is that something we get signed and keep ourselves? So Amy, I don't know if you want to answer that.
Yeah, I think that's another type of documentation that you need to have completed and filled out, but you would retain that in your records. It's not something you're uploading or submitting through the system.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. Turn it back to you for wrap up.
So few super quick wrap up things. Tomorrow is our August PD program talking circle. For those of you who are new grantees, this will be your first talking circle. We really encourage all of the grantees to participate in these monthly events. It's a great opportunity to get updates from OIE and to be able to network with your other PD program fellow grantees. So if you have challenges and you want to get feedback from your peers, if you want to brainstorm, and then also just to be able to go over important information at that time tomorrow for that talking circle, I'll have ready the link of today's training so you can share that with the rest of your team or anyone who wasn't able to join. So join us for that. You should have the calendar invite for it. If you do not have the calendar invite for it, please email us and I'll share our contact info here. You can email us at this oie@seiservices.com. And that we can get you on our email distribution list. So particularly if you are a new grantee, know that all official communication from the department is going to go to your project director, but we do have a general OIE TA distribution list that we can add the rest of your team to. You can just shoot us an email with their names, their roles, and their email addresses, and we'll get them added so they get information as it comes out, especially about all of these TA events. I'm going to launch our feedback poll. We do this at the end of all of our events. We greatly appreciate you taking 2 seconds on the screen to provide a little feedback. While you are doing that, I will answer this couple of last questions. We had one in the paper payback agreement. I also requested proof of tribal affiliation. Are we to upload that separately or keep that record in a different file on campus?
That you're keeping on file for yourself. Yeah.
Great. And then we had a question about the program planners. So will there be a program planner for the PD grantees the way there has been for the other OIE grant programs? So yes, we can definitely make that available to you. So I will get links for that prepped and have some info on that for our talking circle tomorrow.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm excited.
I would definitely, again, just want to underscore the talking circles are not mandatory. However, I would say particularly tomorrow will be very relevant for all of you because I'm going to be speaking to a lot of frequently asked questions on the heels of having conducted about 65% of my post-award calls with a number of you. So again, there's, I think, really helpful and critical information for all of you. And I want to really, Leslie, call you out, but I applaud you for being that kind of grantee that is looking to your peers to network and to support and share resources. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we hope the Talking Circle helps to engender. And Amy, I want to thank you so much for walking us through and showing us how easy it is. So this can be a really complicated process, but I think in the long term, it's really going to save you guys a lot of time. And I think it's, frankly, it helps to nurture an organic way for you to establish relationships with your new participants. So really, really helpful. And thank you all for today. And hopefully I'll see many of you, if not all of you, tomorrow. Have a great day.